Hi everyone. Today I am going to explain what I was saying earlier about how the banks are going to screw you by going back to a mixed metal standard. A lot of people have been sending me emails. I will get back to the squeaky chair as soon as I fix it. Some of the glue is letting go, so I have to re-glue it. But getting back to the point I was trying to make. So a lot of people have been asking me questions about how does this work? You know, how does your debt suddenly become worth more when you're back to a mixed metal standard? So I'm going to try to explain it. It's an attempt. So here we go. So what I have in front of me is, is a Morgan dollar. Now, this one's silver, but let's just say, for example, it's gold for the sake of argument, because I don't want to go into complexities of price. So let's say this is a gold Morgan dollar. And in 1881, when this was minted, this was 100% gold, solid gold, and it was worth $1. Now, how many years? 126 years later, it still has a face value of $1, but in fiat money, because we're not on a gold standard, this dollar is worth 800 fiat dollars. So that's why our grandparents and great-grandparents always said, you know, I remember the time when a Coca-Cola was a nickel. Well, that was because we were on a metal standard, and your dollar in real gold money was worth a lot more than fiat currency. So what's going to happen? Well, when, you know, let's say I'm making $30,000 a year in fiat currency. If we go back to a metal standard and the metal gold is set at a certain price, that's what happened during the end of World War II. We set the gold price at a set price, which was $35. So technically speaking, your American dollar, or our American dollar, was a gold or silver certificate, and it was worth $35 worth of gold. And you could go and take these silver or gold certificates and ask for the amount of money or the amount of gold that dollar was worth. So suddenly, if we go into a mixed metal standard, which I believe we will, after the dollar collapse, whether it's by the way, just as a side note, I don't know if it could be a world currency, it could be whatever, but it's going to have to, for this currency to work, it has to be a mixed metal standard or a commodity standard. So anyway, getting back to point. So suddenly, you know, the dollar collapses. I was making $30,000 a year at my job, and now we're back to a mixed metal standard. Now suddenly, I'm making $3,000 a year, but it's really more like $35,000 because now my dollar is worth more. So that's great. So I have more buying power with my dollar than I did before the collapse. Now comes the bad news. Debt is the exact opposite. Debt will have a value of, let's say, $100,000. We're going to use a mortgage, nice even number. And this is the reason why banks charge interest, because the assumption is that inflation will eat away at that number, $100,000, because you're going to make more money, and the dollar is going to be, and the dollar is going to become less worth as it was originally when the loan was made. So therefore, that $100,000 will be worth less as the years progress. This is the exact opposite of what happens when we go to a mixed metal standard. $100,000 debt is still $100,000 debt. It doesn't get adjusted. So now you went from making $30,000 a year to $3,000 a year, but your $100,000 still stays at $100,000. Now suddenly that $100,000 is worth much more than what you're making. So now you're making $3,000 a year, but yet you still have that $1,000 a month mortgage. So this is where the problem lies. The great thing is now we have a stable currency, but now everybody has a massive amount of debt that they can never pay off because the number is now greater because of this. And that's what's going to screw everyone. That's why I keep telling people to pay off their debt. If your $100,000 mortgage, if you can hack away at it, is now $50,000 or $30,000 or $20,000, then it's still, now you've squeezed it down to a level where you can still pay it off on the now mixed metal standard. So that's the reason why people that's why it's good for governments to go into hyperinflation. They can pay off their mortgages or their bonds by wiping out their debt because their dollar is worth so little. That's what happened in Weimar Germany. That's what they were trying to do. But banks don't operate that way, and the banks have control of the government. That is what fascism is. And that's why fascism came into power in Germany after the Weimar Republic collapsed. They went back to a gold standard, and they entrapped their people and enslaved them. And unfortunately, paid their loans to the banks that lent them money with the gold of the teeth of the Jews who unfortunately were murdered. I pray to God that that never happens here, but I don't think it needs to, going back to that whole mixed situation. So this is why I think that this is a dangerous situation and why you need to pay off your loans. Right now, the dollar is becoming worth less and less, and people, technically speaking, will be paid more and more. Eventually, we'll go to a barter system. But the moment that this is reintroduced, your debt still stays at $100,000, but now you can't pay it off. So that's what I'm trying to explain to everyone. It is critical that you pay down your debt to a level small enough that you can control or eliminate completely, because then if you don't have any debt, then you're going to become very, very wealthy. Your money is going to be worth way more. Your buying power is going to be incredibly stronger, and you'll be able to, and this will encourage you to save, because banks want to hold on to this. See? Because that's the old way. That's the way it was when our great-grandparents and grandparents lived. We were on the gold and silver standard. So that is my explanation of how people are going to get screwed in their mortgages and how they're so wrong that they're just going to be able to pay them off with a check because they're going to be making $100,000 a year. Hyperinflation is bad for the government long term, and they will go back to a gold and mixed metal standard. And that's when they're going to screw you. All right, folks, there you go.